Afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 16th edition of NASCOM BSCI Annual Information Security Summit. I am Shaurya Kaushik, your host for the panel discussion on cloud and managed security service in the paradigm of cloud. Thank you for joining. I would like to invite our first speaker, Mr. Keyur Desai. Can I have him on stage, please? Mr. Keyur Desai is CIO, SR Ports and Shipping, and Head Info Security, SR. Mr. Desai will be moderating the session. Welcome, sir. Next, I would like to invite Major Preeti Bhisikar, Road to Market Leader, APEC and MEA, IBM Security. Can I have her on stage, please? Welcome, ma'am. I would now like to invite Dr. Sriram, CEO of Cybersecurity Center of Excellence, Telangana. Welcome, sir. I would now like to
Hello.
invite Mr. Vesak Rajivan, CEO, Prophase.
Hi.
Hello, sir. Welcome. I thanks everyone for joining in. Over to you, KU, sir.
Right. It takes 20 years to build a reputation and few minutes of cyber incident to ruin it. Stefan Nepo. Thank you, Shaurya, for the lovely introduction. My greetings to everyone present online. Today, we have an amazing panel on cloud managed security services in the paradigm of cloud, where we'll be talking about the cloud adoption and cloud security trends, along with the role of managed security services. We need to keep our eyes focused as we will be touching upon the relevant topic that I'm sure will help us all to strategize the cloud security approach within the organization. According to predictions from Gartner, global spending on cloud services is expected to reach over 482 US billion dollars by 2022. Again, as per Gartner, the public cloud adoption in India is to rise 30%, close to 7.3 US billion dollar again in 2022. Cloud for data storage and big data analytics are growing up with pace. The complexity in the IT infrastructure space increases with the further adoption of IoT, AI, deep learning, and whatnot. It gets a little difficult to manage with the internal teams. Let's not forget, this also increases the attack surface and more prone to the cyber attacks. 80% of the organizations surveyed already have the plan to have a cyber security product as a service in the next 2 to 3 years. And again, this is from Gartner's 2022 leadership vision for security and the risk management. Global managed security services market size is valued at 29 US billion dollar again back in 2020, and is expected to reach or I would say cross 50 US billion dollar by 2027. If we take the common annual growth rate of close to 7.9%. Again, this was by the Brand Essence market research teams. Again, the increasing number of cybersecurity attacks is one of the major factors driving the growth of the global managed security services market. With that, let's go to the esteemed panel members to have an insightful conversation. So first of all, I'll come to you, Major Preeti. In this digital era, cloud security has become an important aspect for all the organizations at large. Please share how important is the MSSP's role to play, and please share your experience while you come from the IBM security services part.
Thank you so much, Keyur, for setting that context in terms of how the cloud is happening, digital transformation is happening. So, I would like to first quickly take a step back in the history. How this began. So it all began late in 1990s with these internet service providers. During that time, ISPs, we had this dial-in internet during that time. They used to offer some user firewall appliances, and if the end user wished, they would sort of provide the services. Sorry for the disturbance. Is it okay now?
Yes, please go on.
Perfect.
Yeah. So if the end user agrees, they used to provide this as a service offering. Now the role of MSSP has drastically evolved over time. The concept of specialized MSSP has come, and with this digital transformation, we see, as per according to Gartner, by 2022, 50% of all SOCs, they will transform into modern operation centers with integrated incident response, threat intelligence, and proactive threat hunting capabilities. This is required. Why? Because with this digital transformation and drastic cloud adoption, the threat landscape has increased, and we do not want to restrict to the traditional way of how a managed security service provider used to support their customers. So they are supposed to be enabling the enterprises to focus on their core work, and they sort of help them in terms of uh, performing the security operations, managing the security operations center, and focusing on the incidents and how to respond. So the traditional way of managing the security around the perimeter, restricting to the networks, restricting to the endpoint devices, with the cloud it is changing, because we see, we have now software defined network, we have cloud hosted network services. So there is a need for the managed security services to think how they need to transform into these modern security operations center that sort of integrates all of the incident response as well as threat intelligence and proactive threat hunting capabilities. Over to you, Keyur.
Perfect. Yeah, perfect. And thank you so much. So, in fact, if I just have to kind of quickly summarize on a couple of pointers, which where you touched upon the concept of specialized MSSPs, and also MSSPs of focus on enabling the enterprise to perform on their own core business. So these are really very vital pointers, Preeti. And if I maybe if you can, based on your experience, if you can also share maybe a relevant, I would say, experience that you may have seen as per your I would say organization's job function when it comes to the client data, etc. Maybe, I mean, just a high level trend when it comes to the overall adoption.
Yeah, so earlier, how organizations used to do, focusing on their core and then partnering with a managed security service provider. If you have a, say, a security operations center, so basically it's a culmination of certain tools and managing the operations for them. With this cloud, we see now they are preferring to have multiple SIEMs, tools and technologies. So we have so many cloud service providers. So it's not only about going with the cloud deployment model. So we talk about hybrid cloud. So organization go with combination of all on-prem, public, private. So that is hybrid cloud. At the same time, this hybrid is going to the next level of multi-cloud. So we have multiple cloud service providers. So they would want to take services from, say, AWS, Azure, Google, IBM Cloud, any of it. I mean, they have multiple clouds together. Now, the challenge that managed security service provider is, how do we manage these security operations with this multiple tools? So we need those different skills. So there are different SIEM tools that needs to be integrated. End of the day, an organization wants to see their threat landscape in terms of how all the information coming from these tools are integrated in the form of information that they can understand and take those steps to reach and mitigate those risks for and the threats for the organization. Uh,
Right. Thank you so much, Ms. Preeti. Can I just come to you, Dr. Sriram, if you can also throw some light on this when it comes to the overall MSP's role uh, for the overall cloud security, or I would say managed cloud security adoption part.
Oh, yes, thank you very much. And indeed, a very interesting topic. So I'd divide this into probably three areas. One is the infrastructure, the second is the data, and the third component is the people. Okay, so as far as infrastructure is concerned, you have configuration hardening, logical segmentation, boundary enforcement, and of course, there will be, I mean, it falls in the middle, which is authentication. And as far as data is concerned, you have ranging from key management, encryption, asset and data classification, data discovery, and login and reporting, right? Logging, all the logging logs and all which are there, and reporting. And people, of course, you'd have authentication, access controls, secondary approvals, and user behavior analytics and all. So we see that there are, again, it's devolving into, it's very much too complex now. And if you were to go with the cloud control matrix of the Cloud Security Alliance, then you see that there are 16 domains and 133 control areas it gets into, ranging from all the application interface security, business continuity management, change control, data security and information security, and so on. Okay, I'll not list out all the areas here. In fact, there are 133 of the control areas and about 15 domains. So if you look at this, it becomes much too complex for anyone to take it on their own. That is why you need a managed security services provider. You not only need a managed security services provider, but there needs to be significant degree of automation and AI as well. Okay, because it is not possible for humanly possible to do things also. Say, for example, checking all the network alerts and all. You need CM, SOAR, you need XDR, you need a whole host of tools, user behavior analytics, and all of these things to be there in the cloud. So if you were to take even, I should say, the serverless design, which is popularly followed, then there are several areas, functions, event-driven server compute platform, API management, storage, database services, the security and access controls, orchestration, and so on. So these are too many to handle, and each one of them handle it in their own way. For example, Amazon is there, AWS is there, Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud, Alibaba Cloud, all of these are there. They do things in their own way, and more new providers are coming up with their own flavors of cloud. So with all this in mind, you certainly need a managed security services provider to handle all of these. And then, of course, you would have the relevant SLAs and SLOs, service level objectives and service level agreements, which have to be drawn up, because the final application that is being hosted on it, depending on the criticality of that and all of this. And cloud is the way to go, as we have seen that it is a good use of resources, pay as you go. And for example, let's say in the new year end or Diwali, suddenly the load spikes, you certainly need to add more compute power and storage power, and you will not need that throughout. So that's why it makes sense to rent it out. And which is where these MSSPs come into picture, and they have very, very important role to play. So that's because there are, again, various levels like infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service. And to take all of these things into account, it is not, there are so many different moving parts that it is not in the purview of any one organization, especially user organizations who want to focus on their business rather than managing all of these components. Okay, MSSPs play an important role in all the areas which I mentioned.
Wow. So I must say you summarized in a very perfect way. And while you touched upon on the 16 domains and 133 controls when it comes to the cloud control metrics, so I'm sure that gives the right direction for all our audience to kind of take a pick on this, saying that when we kind of move towards, or when we strategize for our organization when it comes to the cloud managed security services, what should we look upon? And also the SLAs and the SLOs, as you rightly mentioned, that actually plays a very vital role. So that's a very valid point, and thank you. Oh, okay. So while the cybersecurity attacks on the cloud data are increasing drastically, and as a cloud solution provider, Vaisak, which type of attacks are common, and which ones do you see that are increasing lately? I mean, as a CEO for Profes.
Yeah, thanks, Kayur, for that question. So before I answer that question, so I think this webinar is mostly focused on the MSPs role as well, right? So typically as a solution provider, typically we see it as one of the tools of the MSPs, right? So as Sriram sir was saying about different tools, different varieties of tools are used in the industry for managing, right? So typically the responsibility of serving to MSPs versus serving directly to the customer, right? So we see a big growth of MSPs. I think I agree with Mr. Preeti that of course without an MSP it's very hard to go ahead and use the services, right? So typically as a MSP tool, I mean we serve as an direct tool to the customer as well as MSP also, right? So we see that the people are more aware. They want to have more and more functionalities. I mean, previously, I think this trend is pretty much visible. Previously, we provide a tool to the MSP and that's it. Now the customers of the MSPs want to see the dashboard, right? So that kind of knowledge they already have that on that, but they have that awareness is there. So yes, so we also got a big responsibility in MSP circle as we secure the web apps and all. So now coming back to your question, right now we are sitting on top of the log for the vulnerability, right? So it's been every year you have two or three of those kinds, at least one. So this is at the end of the year it's spited up. So I think of course we the credit goes to the people who figured out that that zero day vulnerability. But it's not stops there. I mean the creativity starts from there. So people like the coronavirus mutate into 50 variants. This vulnerability can even the way of execution can be, the creativity is there. The different ways in which this can be exploited. It's for instance, last day the VMware also got stuck by this vulnerability, right? And they have to do the patching, and it impacts the entire globe, right? So typically that is what's happening right now in the world. And of course this is a big challenge because Java applications are being used like anything, right? So you cannot you cannot have a place without a Java application. At least maybe the .NET applications are running, but they do have a module from a vendor which is running Java. So this is pretty much very important. So we are sitting on top of that, and let's see how that evolves. Let's watch how this is managed by the MSPs or the individual customers or the entire SOC operations team. So let's see how this is going to be. So this is one of the key areas. And typically, since last 1 year, one other attack we are seeing is a credential stuffing. So this requires an important mention because in the dark net, every year you have a big LinkedIn breach or a Facebook breach, and the cost of that is millions of records. Of course, all of our LinkedIn details are in the dark net, no doubt about it, right? So what these guys will do is, I mean, of course, the various accounts, so what these guys will do is they will get the entire database from the dark net. They will use automated scripts and they just try to see if that username and password still works or not. If that works, automatically that is used for other malicious activities. So we are getting, with our customers, we are getting a lot of credential stuffing attack. So it's very hard to detect this attack because of the fact that they are posing as a normal user and supplying the username and password. So of course, if the intent is bad, they will at least make one evidence out there, right? So that is a challenge the team is working on, and on a daily basis, like cat and mouse game. So that is one of the attack. And the other concern, what we can see is the misconfiguration. Of course, the default options is always, I mean, I don't understand why the OEM, including us, why put all these default options in place, right? So still we can see that behavior. And the complexity of the dashboards is, I mean, we most of them SOC guy doesn't know what half of the options is all about, right? He will keep it as it is. So this can also cause a huge problem in industry. Yeah. So these are all things coming into my mind in that context.
Yeah, and absolutely. So, in fact, while you touched on the Log4j vulnerability and also on the typical credential stuffing on the in the dark web, so that has been the trend which really kind of brings us to a point where we need a holding hand where which walks along with us when it comes to such severe threats for the organization. And yeah, and while you also touched upon some of the misconfigurations, so in fact that brings to my next phase, and over to you, Dr. Sriram. Is while the cloud security has received I would say enough traction, what according to you are some of the common configuration mistakes that organizations should be cautious of when it comes to cloud security part?
Yes, there are a number of areas. Obviously, it's like the areas that I've described should highlight that configuration mistakes are possible in several areas, especially taking the servers and using the default configuration and all. But I'll just try and list out a few. But means organizations struggle when it comes to creating and implementing systems that can, have identity misconfigurations. It's very important that we assign some resources for validating and verifying permissions and services to ensure that the configuration is applied. And here, automation is very much in order, and credential hygiene requires more attention. While malicious actors are constantly reinventing their techniques to obtain all these cloud credentials, as Vaishak has pointed out, almost 74% of organizations are not practicing credential rotations and such practices. Then the third one is about storage accessibility. When it comes to storage buckets, many cloud users think that authenticated users cover only those who are already authenticated within the organizations or the relevant application, but this is not the case. For example, authenticated users in AWS means anyone, effectively any AWS customer who has credential. Okay, because of this misunderstanding and resulting misconfiguration of control settings, they can end up exposing the storage of this completely to public access. So the other one, fourth one, is about the what should I say, secrets management. That means critical to ensure that secrets such as passwords, API keys, admin credentials, encryption keys are all secured neatly. So most of such critical secrets, when they are openly available in badly configured cloud buckets or compromised servers, open GitHub repositories, and sometimes even in HTML code itself. So the solution is to maintain an inventory of all of these secrets that you use in the cloud, and regularly check how each one of these is secured. So that is a comprehensive overview. But I would say that nowadays there are automated tools which help ensure that there is a base level, your base level configuration is secure. That means there is a certain baseline, which means there are tools which are like, I want to take the name of a vendor company here, Cloud Rakshak with an X. Okay. We have been working with them. We published a white paper also. So they would go there and say that, yes, if someone has installed a thing with only default credentials and not done anything else, so it would go out and constantly scan and set the perfect baseline for secure configuration everywhere. Someone else has configured a thing during some admin operation and has left it open, let's say a port or something like that, then it would go in there and automatically do it. So such automated tools are coming also to help. So yeah, with this I'll stop. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Sriram. In fact, you've touched very valid, I would say, areas where every organization must be very cautious and must look for. I would say when it comes to maybe the password. So where you touched upon the typical credential rotation not happening within the organization. So that's a very important aspect when it comes to I would say the easy meat for the cyber attacks. So now, while we touched upon the misconfigurations and some of the concern areas, so there are some other, I would say, concern areas are also when it comes to the data privacy and the security part, when it comes to the cloud security. So there are various concerns that come across when the organizations plan to move towards the cloud security as an option. So I would like to know your views, Vaisak, on this. How do you see, or what is that you can give a level of comfort when it comes to the data privacy and security?
Thanks, Kayur, for the question. So typically, I can see on a high level, on a three levels. The one is the data privacy within the SecOps. Let's say you are giving access to a SecOps of your company's data. I mean, what this SecOps guy is supposed to see, because we never know, the internal insider attacks are also there, right? So that's one factor we need to check up. The other thing is like, the data privacy between the subscribers of that particular application to customers of that application. I mean, in different business contexts and different business use cases, there is a visibility of other subscriber to this subscriber, so what all things can be revealed. So these two things has to be taken care of. And number third is that, of course, the data privacy if it's a breach happened, right? So these are the three important factors on the high level which has to be taken care of. But unfortunately, every country got their own data privacy and security rule. And if you go to Europe, you have rule as an OEM. provider, I mean, we face this difficulty on a daily basis. The policy is different on one country, on other country there's another set of policies, and if you go to North America, that's another set of policies. Europe, you lost, right? And now the India is going to implement something else, right? So this is a challenge, where we need to have a unified kind of a data security, data privacy law or whatever. But I know that it's impossible, but within the constraints, or we need to develop with respect to the customer point of view, and the primary thing is to have the privacy of the customers, right? So that kind of measures has to be taken within the application development, right? So it's not only related to the products, but also to the custom application development scenario as well, right? So that is one point. Number two, the other point, we always talk about, how to secure the privacy, how to secure the data, what all things can be done. The other point which is not taken care much deeply is what happens if an impact has happened. We never thinking about mostly, but the reality is that the breach will happen. If you are Google or Microsoft of the world, you are not escaped from that. That's a reality, right? So if a breach had happened, if your customer data has been exposed, what is the next steps you are going to do? This is also a challenging thing to taken care of. So all the organizations and MSPs or whoever dealing with the customer data has to have a keen policy within the organization, and that information must be transparent to the customers as well, how we are going to manage it on case A, case B, and case C. So that is my take on that point.
Perfect. In fact, the typical DevSecOps, which the point that you brought out. So, in fact, that's a very important and a very valid point when it comes to the organizations. As we say, the charity begins from home. So while the application is getting developed, I mean, so this part becomes very vital when it comes to any application, maybe in-house, on-prem, or the cloud hosted. So thanks for bringing it out, Vaisak. So while we touched upon the misconfigurations, while you touched upon the privacy and the overall outside the data security concerns, let me come back to you, Major Preeti, on if you can share some of the best practices and the framework when it comes to data security over the cloud.
Absolutely. Thank you, Keyur. So I'll go back to Sriram sir's point that he mentioned when we talk about, securing data. So we need to first understand, the challenge of currently securing data is increasing in the scope as well as the difficulty, because we know data is dynamically growing, data is distributed, and the degree of complexity is also increasing at the same time with this multi-cloud environment, as well as Vaishak brought out about multiple regulatory and compliance implication that comes across the globe. So having said that, I think the best practices over securing data over cloud would be to go with a data centric security model. So basically, the organization need to first understand what comes in the purview of their responsibility. End of the day, data always remains, even if you are on the cloud, it is always the responsibility of an enterprise. So that is something we need to clearly understand, those shared responsibility. And then we need to understand what is that they need to secure. So basically discover what is that they want to secure. So there are so much of data, they need to classify. Do we want to actually secure everything? Where is the data residing, and is it worth it securing everything? So data classification is, especially important to decide what data they want to protect to what level. And then visibility, where is your data going? How do you want to protect that data? So what are the technologies you want to implement? So we have various ways of data protection technologies, right from encryption. We have different types of tokenization, we have masking, we have redaction. So we need to zero down on based on the understanding what we want to protect, what is the type of technology we want to use for data protection. And then Sriram sir rightly brought about the access. So it is really important in terms of data security, who should access the data and how are we dealing with the end of the life data for an enterprise. So these are very important aspects. Now, when we talk about the best practices, I think we have lot of different cloud models So we need to understand, get the visibility of the multiple cloud environment that we are getting serviced from, then understand the shared responsibility, develop this data centric approach that we spoke about, the overall life cycle of the data that we process in our organization. Then build this data governance policies for multi-cloud, because end of the day, technology is not a solution. We need to use this technology appropriately with the appropriate processes that are in place, and the policies that organization build. Awareness and continuous monitoring is something important when we talk about data security. And end of the day, we need to understand that data security is a process. It's not a product. So we need to ensure that this process is continued, and we do not restrict our data protection technologies only to certain products, because product may have their own flaws. So when we think about the governance policies, think of data governance for the multi-cloud from a policy standpoint rather than a tactical standpoint. And because of these growing sets of tools, the changing philosophies, we have various monitoring capabilities that are available from various cloud providers. It is very, very important that we ensure our governance policies account for all of this, and they are updated frequently. So again, I'll reiterate that data security is a process. It's not a product.
So true. So I'm going to use this again and again. Data security is a process, not a product. So true, so true. In fact, the entire security models, they actually revolve around the data, and which requires proper governance. Thank you, Major Preeti. Coming back to you, Dr. Sriram, maybe a couple of minutes from you on while we have touched various aspects, if you can throw some light on the latest technologies when it comes to the typical use of AI, ML, maybe cryptography or blockchain when it comes to the cloud security, based on your experience.
Oh yes, certainly. So there are a number of new technologies that are there, ranging from IoT to blockchain. Okay, and if you were to take IoT, for example, it spews out data at an amazing rate. And with 5G and all coming in, I do not know, it's just going to explode. Okay, so obviously, where is all this data going to reside? Obviously, it has to be in the cloud, because nobody else can manage the data for all the reasons that we have discussed so far. It is so complex and difficult to manage. Okay, and the scale and sophistication of attacks are growing by the day. So that is one area. I mean, and a blockchain is another one where trust factor comes in, and you want to have a distributed ledger with increasing trust and all that. So if you were to take it at a fine-grained level, you have on-premise applications, then your infrastructure as a service, your container as a service, platform as a service, function as a service, software as a service, and finally a catch-all, which is everything as a service, which they call XaaS. So again, is a very big topic to discuss, but there are various cloud security tools. I mean, right from CASB, is Cloud Access Service Broker, CSPM, Cloud Security Posture Management, CWPP, which is Cloud Workload Protection Platform, CIEM, Cloud Infrastructure Entitlement Management, and CNAP, which is a Cloud Native Application Protection Platform. All of these are there. And you had asked specifically about IoT and blockchain and all. So there are, so let me first start with blockchain. So relies heavily, it's a ledger of every transaction that has ever happened, and that is distributed to the edge of the network. So there is no centralized authority that is responsible. And this is extremely useful where you need high trust. And so not only blockchain, but the things around it are very important. The entire ecosystem around it are extremely important. And these are used essentially like in places where high trust is required, like property management, and where banking loans are given and all. So what is important here, some of the technologies, what is important here is interoperability. And that is why various forums are formed. For example, you have various patient records which are there, and every hospital will put it in it. First, there has to be a certain consensus among them, and then they have to agree to how to put it on the cloud. There has to be interoperability between them. and then they can effectively use, so that you can take is a use case I'm describing, which is a patient will allow, not a patient, let's say someone says that I need health insurance, then to an insurance provider, he has to provide his past medical history. So then he can unlock it for a certain period of time and say that, yes, you can look at it for this particular purpose. Privacy is extremely important here. And then you'll unlock it. Then you'll look at it in the cloud and look at all those records. Let's say he wants to unlock it for only 5 years, 6 years, 10 years, whatever it is. And after that, they'll say, yes, we are good to go, and give him this kind of insurance. And then that is logged off again. So all the privacy measures that are important. Interoperability is another thing which I mentioned is important. And all the security controls which I mentioned earlier are again very, very important. So places like insurance, banks, and many of these B2C services and all, there are many, many touch points, right from the point where people upload their forms and apply for whether a loan or an insurance or anything, to at the time that they claim for the insurance and all. There is possibility of a lot of data leakage and exposure there. Too many touch points, and it resides with a number of people, right from insurance agents to the people who actually are the original owners of the data, to the people who manage the cloud. So it is very essential that through this supply chain, this kind of integrity is managed. That is the biggest challenge here in the cloud. Okay, and in IoT and all these things, due to the huge volumes of data, analytics engines are often used, and AI and ML are used. So today, to hack a thing, you need not even hack the software. You can train the software. You can train using some malicious data, and it will get trained in the wrong way. Okay, so that the AI ML one, you've not messed with the actual software, but you've messed with the data, and then it gets trained in the wrong way, and all sorts of mayhem can happen. So that is the reason why it is essential to safeguard the entire chain will consist of, right from training data, what are you using for AI software, to the actual software that is being used, to what is constantly being data in motion, data in rest, and data in storage, and data in processing. So these three aspects, they need to be very, very well safeguarded. Okay, and of course there are legal issues. Of course there are various different things, how things are reported and in distributed form with boundaryless organization. This becomes extremely complex with more touch points there. So I will stop here, but I hope I've thrown some light on this.
Absolutely, absolutely, Dr. Sriram. So in fact, when it comes to the blockchain, and you really and you rightly pointed on the typical distributed ledger and the trust that it creates when it comes to the blockchain aspect, and the IoT, while it comes with a lot of complexities within the overall IT or the outside the IT infra setup. So, and that becomes a little difficult, or I would say little more difficult when it comes to kind of manage in-house with the internal teams. So that actually brings to the
So,
almost to the
Keyur,
fag end. Yeah.
I would like to add with some statistics that Sriram sir just brought about AI and ML, and this is more related to MSSP. So, according to Forrester's, 64% of the enterprise security decision makers were concerned about the cyber criminals using AI. So now we know the threat landscape that is increasing. So also for 54% of the enterprises are implementing and expanding their AI capabilities by either hiring or outsourcing to an AI expert. So when we talk about AI driven security management, I think from the MSSP standpoint, it allows all the security providers not only to sift through the noise and effectively reduce the false positives for their clients, and AI driven security management also helps the analysts to quickly analyze this large set of data, correlate this data, and allowing them to find potential threats and unusual behaviors before quickly escalating that. As well as this helps to accelerate responses and reduce the time actually that it takes to complete an investigation. Sometimes it may range from days or months, or that can be reduced to few hours if we use these technologies. So I think AI and ML powered detection and response can help leverage data and insight from previous attacks, as well as to help identify some characteristics in new threats. So a lot of work is
Absolutely,
going on
absolutely.
in from MSSP standpoint in terms of how do we use AI and ML there.
So true, so true. And thanks for sharing the stats. And that actually brings to the fag end of our panel discussion. And before I quickly check on the Q&A, I'll just want all of you, so all the esteemed panel members, to give just one key takeaway, maybe in just 2 to 3 words. So I'll start with you, Mijay Preeti. On so one key takeaway for the audience when it comes to the role of MSSP when it comes to cloud security.
Yeah, so I think I already called that out. That data security is a process. It's not a
Not a
product.
product.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, Dr. Sriram.
Well, I would say that stay on top of things, automate as much as possible, and introduce AI ML into the game, okay, and train the people.
Perfect. Back to you, Vaisak.
Yeah, so I would like to point towards another direction. So the DDoS attacks are happening in a large scale. I mean, we hear only this about the outside US and all. Now it's coming to India as well. So you don't rely on a single provider. You need to have, as Preeti might have pointed out earlier, you need to go for the multi-cloud kind of architecture. I mean, AWS, Azure, and a private cluster you have, so you are safe. So that kind of architecture with a good load balancing, it can help a lot.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you. And I'll just quickly check on the Q&A part. If you have any questions part, well, I don't see any questions, uh, neither in the chat nor in the Q&A part. Uh, so in the meantime, let me quickly summarize on the major pointers. So while we started on the concept of specialized MSSPs enabling the enterprise to perform on, or rather to the enterprise to focus on the core businesses, the multi-cloud environment. The again, back to the bold statement which says data-centric security is a process, not a product. Data classification, visibility, data governance policies when it comes to multi-cloud situations or the setup. We also touched upon the log forge vulnerability scenarios and the typical credential stuffing that happens in the dark web, and that is actually a common syndrome nowadays, which we see day in day out when it comes to mass authentication. I would say theft. Again, the DevSecOps. So that is also a very critical area when it comes to for the organizations to take precautions while the application development is, or I would say, is in process. Again, the people, process, and technology, the data classification. Dr. Sriram touched upon the 16 domains and 133 control areas when it comes to the typical cloud control metrics. The importance of SIEM, SOAR, SLAs, and the SLOs. And the important point, which also, or I would say, very common, I would say, pointer which came out, which is the credential rotation that's not happening within the organization. So that's also an important part which the organization should really focus on. And also the automation when it comes to base level controls, which are actually secured. So the baseline should be secured when it comes to the oral. I mean, such automations are actually happening and possible. So that's one. And the interoperability between the multi clouds, that's also important factor. Again, the blockchain, the use of blockchain and AI, which Dr. Srinam actually touched upon very with the deep insights, and again summed up with the right statistics by Major Preeti. I think that actually sums up the oral panel discussion that we had. While I don't see any further questions, or so, I think we can kind of wrap this one. And just to so before I close, I'll just would like to close with a Sanskrit shlok, which says, Lokaha samasta sukhino bhavantu. So which says, let the entire world be happy. Thank you, and stay safe, everyone. Over to you, Shaurya.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Vaishak and Vijayapriti.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Vishak. Thank you, Keyur and Shaurya.
Hi, Shaurya. Thank you.
Thank you so much, speakers, for the valuable inputs and the key takeaways from the session. So I think it might have benefit all the audiences. And if there are some questions from the audience, please let us know. We will take them forward in person. And again, thanks for joining. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.